Welcome to Ladies Talkin Leafs. I'm Chris.
And I'm Sil.
And happy holidays, happy Hanukkah to everyone who celebrates. And we hope everyone had a great Christmas, and it's time to talk Leafs.
Yes. But first, a reminder, we need your vote. We are the 2025 finalists in the Sports Podcast Awards for Best Hockey Podcast, and we are also up for the Diverse Voices Award. We have posted the links to vote in our social media and YouTube profiles, and the links are also in our show notes. Wherever you're listening or watching our show, if you're watching on YouTube, just scroll down to the bottom of the episode page. You'll find the links there. I'm actually putting them at the top of our description, so you don't have to go too far to find them. And we'll be posting reminders right up to January 13th, which is when voting closes.
Yeah. So definitely just hit that little thumbs up, everything, and vote for us. We already got some good good numbers going, so just keep it up, and you can vote more than once too. So.
Yes, thank you.
Yes,
please vote.
Yeah,
early and often.
Yes. So a quick note, just to let you know about our show sponsor, BetOnline. BetOnline, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all of the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen.
With the largest selection of odds on everything from the NHL to football, NBA and college basketball to UFC and MMA also. Head to the website betonline.ag today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online gaming. BetOnline, the game starts here. Please gamble responsibly. If you or someone you know needs support or advice, you can reach out to Connex Ontario or an organization near you. And we're going to go right into the show now, and we're going to start off with our Best of 2024 Ladies Talkin Leafs highlight reel. And then for our third period segment, we are welcoming back our Ladies Talkin Leafs insider, Mike Augello. So without any further ado, let's talk Leafs.
All right, so for the Best of our 2024 Ladies Talkin Leafs highlight reel, we went back through all of our episodes of 2024 and picked out the top three that made it to our highlight reel the most often in 2024. So that's how we came up with these top three for the whole year. So now let's roll it.
All right. So coming in at number 3 is Mitch Marner. So 2024 was a really good year for Mitch. It would have been great if he didn't get that high ankle sprain last season in March. Just before the injury, he had 24 points in 14 games and up to late February, and he recorded his 50th assist, which was the 5th of his career, the third player in Maple Leafs history to do that. Borje Salming had 5, and Daryl Sittler had 6 seasons of 50 assists. He's back to being Magic Mitch again this season. And as we record this podcast on Sunday, he is tied for 5th spot with Connor McDavid in total points with 50. Yeah. So, yes.
Yeah, there's no problem with Mitch. That injury hurt him basically. And
even in the playoffs, like he just wasn't quite himself. And, but, summer of resting and rehab and, getting stronger, he's back to his old self now.
Yeah. And just in time for his contract year too. But
yes, of course.
I don't think that says, nothing really majorly to do with that. I do want to give an honorable mention though to William Nylander, who did, he didn't make our highlight reel here, but, he almost did, but Mitch got him by just a little bit there. All right. So moving on to number 2 is surprisingly Anthony Stolarz and the goaltending. This one was a surprise to me, considering Stolarz only arrived here this season, to start the season, but he's made an impact, and it shows by the number of times the goaltending factor has come up in our highlight reel. Stolarz held the fort with Joseph Woll while Joseph Woll was injured and to start the season. And he made some huge saves, crucial saves that won us a few games this season. 2 of them that stood out to me was the third period versus Winnipeg in late October, and then again in a game versus Minnesota in early November. Stolarz stole the show. So, and we are missing him right now
definitely. Another game that I'm reminded of is that New Jersey game that he started. I still see him with his when He scored just like his arms out like that. You know, there's a lot of passion there. It's really unfortunate that he's out now. I really think that he was hoping things would be different this year, with regards to that kind of thing. But you know what? It's still, it's kind of incredible to me that, you know, in such a short time he's made our highlight. That just goes to show you that at the beginning of the season, there was really not much else to talk about except for the goaltending as they were figuring things out, with the new system. Another reason I think that the goaltending made our highlight reel so much was even going back to last year. We can remember all the things that happened with regards to Samsonov, and, you know, when he came back, he really had a huge bounce back and he was playing really great. And that was such a good story, you know, with what he went through. Unfortunately, in the end, you know, goaltending wasn't good enough to get us through, you know, farther into the playoffs, you know, as we'd like. And of course, that's why they made changes there. But yeah, it's kind of incredible that in such a short time, that made such a big impact.
Yeah. No, it was incredible. And, like you're saying with Samsonov too, like he was on our highlight reel in March.
I remember that
after the return. Yeah. Cause he was playing phenomenal. And then you couldn't really blame him, like for that surprise game 7, like where he was basically coming into play versus the Bruins. And like, I mean, you're supposed to be ready as a goaltender in all situations, but I think everybody expected Joseph Woll to play that game. And then all of a sudden the mysterious injury showed up for that as well.
Well, and like the whole reason Woll was playing was because, you know, Samsonov wasn't playing that great at that time. Yeah. So yeah, it was a difficult situation, I think, but yeah.
Now we got this, I guess the tandem at the beginning of this season was Hildeby and Stolarz, the two twin towers there, big guys. And, and they definitely held the fort while Joseph Woll was out. And now Joseph Woll needs to do his part.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. So let's move on to our number one highlight reel participant, and that is Auston Matthews. So Matthews got on our highlight reel so many times last season that his injury woes from this season didn't even hurt him from getting to our top spot in the best of 2024. So obviously his 69 goals last year was the highlight of the season overall. And with that, he became only the third player in NHL history to have multiple 60-goal seasons with an original 6 franchise. Phil Esposito had 4 with Boston and Steve Yzerman had 2 with Detroit. So we'd like to see Auston get on the highlight reel a lot more in the second half of this, this new year coming up. We are really certainly missing him right now.
Yeah, the thing that I like in going through all the times he was on the highlight reel, I guess this time last year in December, it was like we said it was a December to remember for Auston Matthews because he had 15 goals and 6 assists, 21 points.
Wow.
And he already had his 30th goal.
Yeah. I know. I remember that, how like we couldn't believe he already had that many at that time.
Yeah.
So
it was just insane. Like it just,
and all the hat tricks he had already in the first half of the season too. Like I remember that, like that was totally insane. We just hope that he can, you know, get to feeling like his normal self, because it's plainly obvious in the way he's skating and he's just not getting that real zip on his shot. All of that comes from your posterior chain in the back end, right? So something's going on back there, and hopefully they figure it out soon and he gets the rest and rehab that he needs to get back to his usual self.
Yeah. But for now, he's number one for 2024.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So now we're going to talk a little bit more about the Leafs of 2024 and look ahead to 2025 in our third period segment with our Ladies Talkin Leafs insider, Mike Augello.
Okay, so for our third period segment and to close out 2024, we welcome back our Ladies Talkin Leafs insider, Mike Augello.
Mike covers the Leafs and the NHL as a reporter and is a member of the Professional Hockey Writers Association. A lot of Leaf fans know Mike from his days as a calling guest, Mike in Buffalo, on AM 640's post-game Leaf Talk show as well. So today, Mike is a host of Off the Post podcast and the Leafs Convo, and he is also the site manager for the Hockey News covering the Buffalo Sabres. That's a mouthful. And thanks for coming on the show, Mike. Happy holidays and Happy New Year to you.
Happy holidays. And now we're out of time. Thank you for, because basically you read all that stuff and now you don't have time to talk to me about it.
Yeah, you're a busy guy. Busy guy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So getting right into it here, 2024 is coming to a close, and looking back, we just want to know what you have as a positive and a negative Leaf moment from 2024. What's your take on that?
This will be short. Positive.
Yes, I was going to say we're focusing on the positive, maybe a little bit more.
Well, if you go back to last season, Auston Matthews setting the franchise record for goals in the season was a positive. I do think that the moves that were made by the franchise over the summer were a distinct positive, since they finally listened to somebody who had been calling post-game shows since 1998 and actually added defense and added defensemen who could actually play defense. I think, that's from then I'm really, pulling things out in terms of other positives. I mean, okay, they got the Nylander deal done. He's been a very, very good player. I think this year the John Tavares playing the way he has played has been pretty substantial for the franchise, because Matthews is having his injury issues. But really, there's a lot of sort of type of stuff and a lot of negative, which, I could go on and on about. So, this franchise in the Shanahan Matthews era, with all the talent that they have, has won one series. So, it's tough to overlook that. And until they do, I feel very comfortable in being my sunny, optimistic, sarcastic self.
Yeah. And I guess it's hard too, because when you go back to like Mike Babcock, I'll never forget the words, like he said, and we're going to win a lot of Stanley Cups after he had that 8-year deal. And he said to Leaf fans, it's going to be fun and he might stick around for more Stanley Cups. And it's like, we haven't made it past the first round. It's just, that is a tough one. But yeah, we're both in agreement, I think, still too, with the defense. What you said about finally they've at least managed to get a group that they seem to be very tight together. Like Chris Tanev was saying yesterday before the game versus the Capitals, he was saying the D group is very, very tight and protecting their net and protection of themselves. So yeah.
Okay, so having said all that, then, if we're going to look ahead to 2025, what do you think is still their biggest need going into the new year then?
Well, I think there's a significant list, but the issue here is the unknown. And the big unknown is the health of Auston Matthews, because I think that affects everything going forward. Even if he comes back and he plays the way he was playing before he got re-injured in Buffalo over a week ago, he was not 100%. He clearly was not playing at 100%. Now, his 80% is better than 85, 90% of this league. But this team, with him playing at 100%, didn't win. So how can they win with him playing at 80%? And I believe that Brad Treliving's shopping list when it comes to what they're going to target before the trade deadline is directly affected of what Matthews is at that point before March the 7th. If he continues to be at a diminished capacity, then I think the number one thing on their shopping list is another center. Because if you look at the lineup, the last couple games, John Tavares is he's been a number one center before. He can be a number one center. Their advantage is having him as a number two. With him filling the number one slot, that enables the other team to match their top checker against him and whoever he's playing against.
Yeah.
And your number two center is Pontus Holmberg. And Pontus Holmberg is not a number two center. He's not a number three center. I think he's barely a number four center.
Yeah.
And then you have Max Domi, who's done a better job of late in the number three slot. And here's where I think the big issue is. And he just came back from an injury, so we can't completely destroy him, but I'll try. David Kampf is barely an NHL player right now. He's got one goal in the number of games. I don't even know how many he's played, but he was out for 5-6 weeks. Ever since he signed that long-term extension that Kyle Dubas signed him to, and it's not a big cap hit, it's $2.4 million. He used to be a good defensive center and, a good penalty killer. He's not a bad penalty killer still, but he made an error yesterday that cost him a goal. And he's just not been, I know he scored his first goal of the season against Detroit. He's just not been a good player. And when you have a player who's under contract for another couple seasons at $2.4 million, even if the cap is going up, I'm sorry, that's money that's really wasted. And if Matthews is diminished and David Kampf continues to play as badly as he has before the injury and after the injury, then I think it's a necessity to go out and get a center.
Yeah, that seems to be like the number one thing. What about our goaltending right now? How do you feel about that? Like at the beginning of the season or even a few weeks ago, like that would never have been crossed my mind as a need. But I don't know. I'm a little concerned about that right now.
Well, the Anthony Stolarz story at the beginning of the year was sort of like you were told that this gold bar was 14 karat gold and now it's pyrite. Now it's fool's gold. And I'm not slagging Stolarz for the way he played, but anybody who's followed this league and knows Anthony Stolarz knows that throughout his career, he's had injury issues, a lot of injury issues. He's a big goaltender. Big goaltenders normally break down. He had knee problems in Philadelphia. He, in a couple instances in Anaheim, was given an opportunity to take the job, whether Gibson was hurt or whatever. That didn't work. He goes to Florida. It's a perfect scenario for him as a backup to Sergei Bobrovsky. He wins a cup. He plays great last year, but he played 20 some odd games. That's what he was brought here to do. The whole point of this season, and I've said this from the summer, and I'll keep saying it throughout the season, the number one thing on the list of Leaf priorities this year is to find out whether Joseph Woll is the number one goalie. And he wasn't available at the beginning of the season, and they had to go with Stolarz, and Stolarz played well. But the problem is that Stolarz can't play that many games. And I almost think that if they have Stolarz and Woll throughout the rest of the regular season and into the playoffs, that they may go with a goalie rotation in the playoffs, because I don't know whether both of them can play completely through every other night at a high-paced, high emotion, everything that goes with the playoffs. I mean, goaltenders there's going to be contact between players and goalies. It's tough stuff. So
I think too, like even now they're kind of like protecting Woll a little bit, like with bringing, I mean, he wouldn't play back-to-backs. Nobody in the NHL does these days or what, these times. But I don't know. I actually thought Woll would have played versus the Capitals. I thought they were going to give Murray the start on Friday night, in Detroit. And they actually played Woll 2 times in a row, which I don't know. Well, when that has happened.
That's what they did the previous weekend. They started Murray in Buffalo in his first start in 19 months.
Yeah.
And he played well, but Buffalo has been terrible this year. And even with Buffalo playing terribly, Murray was still a little rusty. And then in the second of back-to-back games, they play Wall against the Islanders, and the Leafs just laid a turd. It was just not a good performance whatsoever. So I get the impression that they were basically saying, okay, let's get the 2 points, especially against a team that beat us a couple weeks ago with Wall and net. And I thought Wall was pretty good in that game. He made a couple good saves, but the Red Wings defense scored all 3 goals in that game, and the Leafs jumped on Detroit and got the victory. I mean, we know the history of Washington and Ovechkin against the Leafs. So I almost thought, get the 2 points and then roll your dice from there. And Murray was not good yet, good on Saturday. The first 2 goals should have been stopped.
Wall versus the Jets too. Like he played well on the Monday. It was, he played well there, even though we lost the game too. But he had, that was a good opponent, or versus a good opponent, obviously, in the Winnipeg Jets. But, I don't know changing from the goaltending though for a second. What do you think is up with Matthew Knies? I don't know. He's just not the same. A lot of, from this concussion, that he had, do you think that he
does he miss his Arizona friend? Misses his Arizona friend.
I mean, that's very possible. I mean, Matthews draws a lot of fire, draws a lot of attention. You have to remember, Knies is 22 years old. This is his second full NHL season, so there's going to be inconsistencies there. I don't perceive of him being as physical as he was before the concussion. So there may be a natural hesitancy there. I think eventually he'll get back to where he was. But
I guess playing with Holmberg didn't help last night.
Yeah,
I didn't.
And that's the thing. It's like, the domino effect of Matthews being out, not only, because the best hockey that Max Pacioretty has played is with Tavares and Nylander. And that means your number one line has been Knies, Matthews, and Marner. And now with Matthews out, then you scramble everything and you're putting Tavares with Marner and you're putting Nylander, and they're expecting Nylander to drive his own line, but you need somebody to get you the puck. And, Holmberg, and I'm not ripping on Holmberg. He's an $800,000 player. He is a bottom 6 guy. He can kill penalties every once in a while. He's just not a top 6 forward. He's not a top 6 center. So to ask him to play that position, and they know what they're going to get out of Max Domi if you move him higher in the lineup, because he's a defensive liability. And I still don't believe he's a center, but I think out of necessity, they have to play him up the middle right now, because otherwise, they just don't. What are you going to do? Play Connor Dewar on the third line? It doesn't work. Or call up Fraser Minton when he's not ready. So, that's an issue. And that's why, I think Treliving is going to target a center at the deadline, whether it's somebody with term left or whether it's somebody who's a rental. There have been names out there like Yanni Gourde, which would make a ton of sense because, this guy who won 2 Stanley Cups and could play that third line center role and can kick in a goal or an assist every once in a while. And according to Pierre LeBrun, he would be willing to waive his no trade clause to come to Toronto. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Whether it ends up happening, who knows? Yeah.
And have you heard anything about the Marner? Apparently they said that the Marner the Leafs sent him an offer, and he basically shot it down. Like, I don't know if that was like recent or if they're still talking about from before the season started, but is there you hearing anything news about that with his contract?
The silence has been deafening on this front. Apparently Treliving and Darren Ferris had agreed to not legislate the negotiations in the media. My interpretation, okay, we know he's on a 100-point pace. He's having a really good year right now. Shock. I mean, he's doing essentially the same thing that Nylander did before his contract was extended. Do I think that Marner's contract is going to be extended in season? No, I don't. I think it's going to go till after the season, because the determinative factor here is not what he does in the regular season. It's what he does in the playoffs. And if he's a ghost Casper in the first round and they lose, then I don't think they're going to pay him even as much as Nylander. And that's his loss because he can get an 8th year in Toronto. He needs to sing for his supper. He needs to perform, and it's not all on him. But, the one time they did win in the playoffs in a round, Mitch Marner, I believe, was their leading point getter. So they need him to perform. And it's going to be difficult when it's Florida or Boston or Tampa in the first round. These are teams that they've come up against a bunch of times in the case of Tampa Bay and Boston and fallen short all but one of them. So I don't think anything's going to happen. Obviously, nothing's going to happen in terms of a trade because he has no move clause, and the Leafs are, they're a contender, so they're not going to trade Mitch Marner before the end of the season. But I think this is something that's just going to linger into the offseason, and if they fall short again, then I'd be really surprised if he's re-signed. I mean, he may be willing. He may want to stay in Toronto, but he wants to get paid more. And I don't think they're going to pay him if they don't have some success when it counts.
It's funny, you were mentioning about the positioning there, playing Florida or Boston. Like right now we're tied with, as we're doing the podcast here on the Sunday, we're tied with Florida for top spot in the Atlantic. And I think last night I checked, we'd be playing the Ottawa Senators if it was today. So that would be quite
interesting.
Yes, yeah. If that was to happen. So
Ridley Gregg. Yeah, there you go.
I don't know if that's good or bad. I don't know, right? But it should be good. But
the way Ottawa plays the Leafs during the regular season, no, it's not. Yes. Because it's like, but you have to say it's like sort of like Buffalo. Every Ottawa-Toronto game is like Game 7 of the Stanley Cup because they traditionally weren't making the playoffs, but they make the playoffs. It's going to be a different story, but they've got some injuries now with their goaltending. And we'll see how the season,
Yeah, it's early. We still got a lot, and we got that lovely Four Nations Cup to go.
Definitely, we need to be gunning for the top spot.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah. Sure. Done that. We haven't entered the playoffs in that position yet. So we'll see if that makes a difference.
Well, they did in the Canadian division, and look how that turned.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
we don't want to talk about that, Mike.
No.
All right, so let's move on to the Auston Matthews injury a little bit. And obviously, if he doesn't get back to 100% this season, what do you think the Leafs are going to do? Do you think they're going to put him on LTIR, do the Kucherov thing? Do you think there's any possibility of that? Or is it more likely that they just manage it and just say, like you said earlier, he's at 80%, he's probably better than a lot of NHL players in the league. And then that Four Nations Cup, for me, he should not be participating in it anyways, from now, basically.
I agree. And the thing is whether the Leafs have any say-so in this. Because if this is a player who missed a significant chunk of time during the preseason, which fine, that's nobody cares. Then 3 weeks during the regular season in which they went 8-2. Now he's missed 4 games and they're 1-3. So, every team can sort of step up for a limited amount of time without their best player and be able to compile points, and that's valuable. But when the middle of April comes around and the playoffs are here, they need Auston Matthews at his absolute best. Do I think it's realistic that they're going to tell him on December 29th, Auston, we'll see you in April. Go to, the Caymans and rest on a beach or whatever.
Make sure Gary Bettman doesn't see you.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think it's realistic. I think they're probably going to try to manage this. The one thing, and again, I have no direct knowledge of what exactly the injury is. All I know is that after the game in Buffalo, they said that the cross check that Dennis Gilbert laid on him in front of the Buffalo net was what re-aggravated the injury. And if you look at the replay, it was lower back around the hip. So that means it could be a lower back problem. It could mean a labrum problem and a hip problem. Could be sports hernia. You don't know. It could be all a number of things. But you would think that if this was something that could be addressed via surgery and he would be 100% after the surgery in season, it would have been done in training camp, or it would have been done after the 3 weeks. They tried to, he was skating on the ice and he went to Germany and he did all these things. And it looks like they're going down sort of the management path, this season. Now, if they're in a situation where in early March before the deadline, they think he needs 4 or 5 weeks of rest and that will improve his chances of being more effective in the playoffs, then you could see them do a Kucherov, Mark Stone type of situation where they're opening up $13.25 million in cap space, and then they bring back Auston Matthews for game 1 of the playoffs. That's possible. But, who are you going out there to get with all that cap space? I mean, it's not like you're going to go out and trade for Mikko Rantanen. It's like those guys aren't available. So it's almost too much cap space to open up. They need this guy healthy. And they'll do whatever they think needs to be done to have him be the most healthy. But, the season, it's a situation where, one turn of the skate or one wrong move or one check along the boards, he could re-aggravate it again. And that's why,
that's the thing, like in the playoffs, like that's basically like right at the start of the game sort of thing. That's what happens. And we can't afford that. Like the way you're saying, like what about, is there any number one sort of D-men that we could get that may help our, to fill in that $13.25 million? I don't know, like,
well, I mean, you're going to trade for Ivan Provorov, or, I mean, the defensive. Yeah, exactly. I mean, there is not a defenseman out there that is a UFA that I think would really, that would not cost them an absolute ton. Mm-hmm. That would make a significant difference. I mean, if you could trade for Cale Makar, sure, wonderful. Sign this, I'm sure Brad Treliving
someone to play with Morgan Rielly. That's our next topic there.
Everybody thought that was Chris Tanev.
I know.
but and the thing is, it's like, I mean, Oliver Ekman-Larsson is a very good defenseman and he's played really well for them, but I don't think he's a fit with Rielly. The whole point here was to have Rielly play with a right-hand shot or somebody who is used to playing the right side. And Ekman-Larsson is not used to playing the right side. He played primarily the left side with both Florida, Arizona, and Vancouver. So he's playing out of position. And I think he's done a decent enough job, but you're talking about playing 20, 21 minutes a night with Rielly. And Rielly's been okay, but he hasn't been as good as he was last year. So,
that's the thing. It's a problem because the Leafs defense, like as a whole, like we're at the bottom basically when it comes to goals scored by a defenseman, which is not unusual. Our defense has never been productive, but Rielly is our number one offensive minded defenseman, and his numbers are down. And I just noticed, especially last night, like you saw versus with the Capitals, their defense was always on the, taking shots, they're trying to obviously do the screens in front of Murray and stuff, and always taking shots from the point. And Jacob Chikrin, I think, was the one guy that had it. And
you've got Carlson, Chikrin, and Rasmus Sandin.
And Rasmus Sandin, yes.
They're much more offensively capable than
we just don't have anybody that shoots from the point like that. Like, we're in the bottom, and I I don't know. This is the part where I don't know, like at the trade deadline when you're saying like it all depends on Matthews' health, obviously, but whether or not they go for the center or they go for another defenseman, since Tanev now is, I guess, more of the shutdown pairing with McCabe. Perube seemed to be set on that. Like, but we still need somebody to play with Riley. It's kind of weird.
What about, I've heard some talk about getting Shen back. What about that idea? Since Nashville is doing so great right now.
Well, Shen would be an improvement in terms of physicality on the bottom pairing, but I know that he
played really well with Riley though in that series.
He did. But
he's a little bit older now too though, but
yeah, right. And he's a little bit slower, and it was a very short window. I like Luke Shen. I would take Luke Shen back as a bottom pairing guy. Especially but he's a little overpriced based on, remember he was an $800,000 defenseman when they traded for him. And now he got a bigger contract with Nashville. Unless Nashville is willing to eat money on that, I'm not sure that's a fit. I mean, the name that's been popping out there, the last week or so, especially after the article that Pierre LeBrun and Chris Johnston wrote, was David Savard, who's
I've heard that too.
And he's with the Canadians now. The Canadians will trade him no matter where. It's whoever pays the highest price. But right-handed defensemen at the trade deadline who've, a lot of playoff experience like Savard does, you're at least going to get a second round pick, and maybe more than that, because it could be one of those deals where you have to trade him to a third team to shave some of the money off. So those are going to be expensive. And again, I know for sure that the Leafs do not want to trade Easton Cowan. I'd be shocked if they want to trade Fraser Minton. I'd be fairly surprised if they wanted to trade a kid like Grabyankin, who I think Berube likes, and maybe by the end of the year he'll be on the fourth line instead of the useless Ryan Reeves. So that limits you to maybe a Topi Niemela, Nick Robertson, although Nick Robertson is starting to score now, and draft picks. And we know that they have a second round pick and then 3 lower picks in the upcoming draft. I mean, we know it's going to be a decentralized draft, but if you don't want to send anybody to Los Angeles or wherever the draft is, just trade those picks away, and then you can just take the summer off. But yeah. So
yeah, I mean, seems like the Hawk and Paw thing really, really screwed us that way, in a way, because he's a right shot guy who is physical, but anytime he's tried to come back, you can tell like the guy can't skate.
Yeah, I mean, I almost get the impression, because remember, originally the deal that was never announced after it was reported was a 2-year deal.
Mm-hmm.
And then this year, when it finally got announced right around training camp, it had magically morphed into a 1-year deal for a little more money than what he was going to get on a 2-year deal. I think the AAV was $1 million. It was 125, and the AAV on his current deal is like 1.4 or something like that. So I almost get the feeling like, okay, we know your knee is cooked, but we don't want to, let's see, we'll give you some rest. We'll do this. We'll see how it is. And if it doesn't work out, we'll put you on LTIR, but the LTIR situation will only, be there for a year. And, they don't want to go into LTIR, but it gives them some flexibility at the deadline if he can't play. He played 2 games and then he's not played again, and we don't know, it's like Kalle Järnkrok. They're on Robida Island or something. They're just, they've just disappeared. I don't know if there's been any sightings of Kalle Järnkrok, and his problem, I believe, was sports hernia. He had the surgery. So, you don't know how long it's going to be before he's back, and he's got term on his contract. So, yeah, I mean, there are some question marks with the injuries on this team. and, the Matthews one being the most important, but there are other ones that could affect the team going forward.
Well, I guess we'll see what happens in the new year. Chris, you got anything more you want to add to that?
No, I don't think so. I'm just hoping 2025 is a lot better when it comes to good health for everyone. It
is interesting because the last few years, our team's been pretty healthy.
Yeah.
We haven't had a lot of issues in that regard. So this year we're hit pretty hard by the injury bug. So anyway, hopefully 2025, when we turn the corner, we'll start to exit the infirmary and we'll get some better chemistry moving forward. And number one, of course, we want Auston Matthews back on the ice playing at 100%. So anyways, Mike, we thank you again for being our guest. And again, you can hear more of Mike's Leaf views on the Leaf Combo podcast, and also as host of the Off the Post Radio covering the NHL. And you can find both of those shows on YouTube. And if you don't follow Mike on X, make sure you do. His handle is @MikeInBuffalo. All right, Mike, Happy New Year. And we will be talking to you again very soon in the new year.
Happy New Year, ladies.
All right. Thanks to Mike for coming on the show. Always great as usual. And I was actually surprised that not surprised. He only had the one comment of the positive for 2024 with the defense, but yeah, no, he's
significant.
It is. Yes. Yeah.
And he started with that. So that's good.
Yes, that's true. Cause I was thinking he might say, "Oh, really? You want a positive from it?" Right? Right. Let's just vote the negative. But it seems like a lot of what he said too is Brad Treliving is going to have some work to do, basically. And it's going to be interesting to see where the focus is going to be, whether it's going to be at the center position because of the Auston Matthews injury and how it goes and how he manages that, assuming that's how it happens. And, and then also, I guess, to do with the defense, whether or not, I was going to say to him too, it's almost like the way with Morgan Rielly on the defense, trying to find a pairing for him. It's like the way we always needed to find a winger for Matt Sundin.
That's exactly what I was just going to say. That's what it reminds me of so much.
Yeah.
But, the thing is, if you're a good player, you've got to find ways to make other people around you better and not always be waiting for someone to make you better.
Right. Yeah,
so,
and to his credit, that's actually what Riley said last night or yesterday before the game.
He's very self-aware, and he really knows himself, and he's very frank and honest. So you got to give him credit for that. Yeah.
So, but we're going to just look ahead now to the busy schedule for the Leafs. It continues for January.
Definitely big time condensed before February.
December was the busy. They have two busy months, basically December and March. December was the first one, 15 games. But this one to start off in January is pretty busy, basically a game every other night. And it's starting off with the Islanders, I guess, on New Year's Eve, in an afternoon game. And then we have a back-to-back at home once again. Whereas we had that originally, with the Hall of Fame game. I think that's why they had that. But now we have the back-to-back at home this weekend versus the Bruins on Saturday night and then versus the Flyers on Sunday. But
how is it that Winnipeg has only gotten away with having hardly they have half the amount that we have up to this point?
It's funny how that only came up too just this week on the Sportsnet broadcast, right? Nobody else has really mentioned that. It's like,
I know.
We seem to have got screwed that way. And mind you, Carolina, I mean, there are other teams, but still that's that are playing that much, but that's drastic.
Well, maybe, although you said March is also very busy, but maybe we'll have not as many back-to-backs. I mean, you can't have more than 15 for the year. That just seems crazy.
Yeah, no.
Anyways.
And we do have the game, I guess we play the Islanders on New Year's Eve, and then we play on Thursday to kick off 2025. We play on the island on Thursday. So I'm sure all the John Tavares fans will be there.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so after all that, we are back to our regular schedule, and that means next week we'll have our Leafs Quick Hits episode covering all the games and news to keep you up to date on the Leafs.
Don't forget to vote for Ladies Talkin Leafs for the Sports Podcast Awards. Links to vote are in our social media and YouTube profiles and in our show notes. You can find our show on the Believe Network. And if you are watching the show on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button and you won't miss an episode, or hit that follow button if you're listening on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to our show. We would also love to hear from you. Be sure to leave us a rating or review. And if you're listening on Spotify, please answer our poll question. We're still waiting. I did check earlier today. Still no full answers, but we're hoping. And feedback, it's because feedback from our listeners is so important. And we love to hear from you. And we thank you for taking the time.
And another way to help us is by visiting our Ko-fi page at Ko-fi.com. You can follow us there. And if you choose to, you can support us by buying us a coffee. Any donation goes towards helping us produce the show and making it even better for you. You can find the link to our Ko-fi page in our show notes or in any of our social media profile pages.
And as always, thank you to our healthcare workers and first responders for everything that they do.
And we thank you, as always, for listening and watching Ladies Talkin Leafs presented by Bet Online. Happy New Year, everyone. 2025 is going to be a big one for the Leafs. But until next time, go Leafs, go.
Do you believe?